Hey everybody, this is Zachary Jeans. Let's keep walking through the Bible. So today is episode 528. Yes, it is. Double checked. And we are working our way through the last part here of Proverbs. Now today we've set aside chapter 31. It is the words of King Lemuel, and it is some thoughts on kings and their responsibilities and where partying and not partying fits into that. As you can imagine, his idea is that it's not a good thing. And then we're also take a look at Proverbs 31 woman. And you're like, what is that? And some of you are like, I know this passage inside out. To be honest, it's probably next to Ruth, and maybe the study of Deborah or Hannah, the most studied women's study that I come across just in my, as I over the years have looked out there at what study materials are going on. It's pretty hard to go a couple years at any church and there not be a study on Proverbs 31. And it is full of real solid advice and wisdom to a young man looking for a partner in life. Okay, so we'll take a look at that as well. I want to say thank you. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your likes. Thank you for hitting that little reshare button. You never know who you're going to impact. If you just take the boldness and you pray over it and you hit reshare or retweet or whatever platform you're on. So I really appreciate that. And if there's anything I'd be praying for, let me know. Let me know. All right, well, why don't we get started by praying? I think that'd be a good idea. And then we'll get going. Lord, I love you. God, thank you for your word. Thank you for, God, guarding my heart, forgiving me for the times that I've indulged too much, drinking out at conferences and stuff in the past. And God, I just say thank you, God, for your mercy and your forgiveness. God, I want to say thank you for my wife. God, she's an emblematic person of this Proverbs 31 person. She is so full of all these good things. And I know she's not perfect. None of us are. But God, she loves you and she serves you and she loves her family and she serves her family and she works outside the house and she works in the house and she loves me, God. She just does all this stuff, God. I know there's so many women out there that read something like this and it messes with them and they're like, what kind of standard is this, Lord? And God, I want to celebrate, God, the good things here. And I want to see the truth that you have, that you want to share with the women and the men out there that are trying to understand what this is. God, just please help me be faithful with it. And it's in your name I pray, Jesus. Protect us from the enemy and his lies. Amen. Yeah, protect us from the enemy and the lies. All right, well, hopefully you can take a second, go to esv.org and listen to chapter 31 or read it and maybe take your journal, a couple notes. Come on back. All right, chapter 31, Proverbs, verse 1. The words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. Okay, who is writing this? It's not Solomon, right? That first observation, not King Solomon, not Augur, who had just written some Proverbs there earlier, and not King David as related to us by Solomon, first rough 10 chapters or so of Proverbs. We have basically a recounting of King David's advice to his son Solomon. So this is King Lemuel. I'm not going to do a whole history of King Lemuel and who is this guy and da-da-da-da. But a king, right? So somebody of authority in a place where he's ruling. And so his advice here, you should understand it from that context. He's speaking truths that are generally true. But who is his audience? Well, it's going to be his son, who is what? Somebody that he intends to take over for him after he passes on the rule, or his life, right? And passes on the rule. And he's trying to advise somebody who will be in authority over other people. So already, if you have issues with authority, I understand. Like, it's a kings and authority and all of this stuff. It's very difficult, especially in the context that we live in, to sort of jive with, right? Because we vote for people, we choose where we want to work, where we don't want to work, who we want to hang out with, who we don't want to hang out with. Understanding life under a kingdom, 1,000 years before Jesus was even born, a little tough, right? But we've done it before, so let's come back into it. So just understand who we're listening to. This is King Lemuel, an oracle. So this is like a vision of truth that his mother taught him. So the king's mother, he is relaying, much like Solomon did of his father David, King David's advice in the first 10-ish chapters of Proverbs. He is now not just relaying his counsel to his son, he's relaying the counsel of his mother. So this would be the queen, or the mother of the king, okay? And this is what she advised him, and now King Lemuel is ostensibly advising his son, okay? So here this is both the voice of a king and the voice of a mother. What are you doing, my son? What are you doing, son of my womb? What are you doing, son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. Seems valid, right? Mom, what does a mom want for her son? Hey, I know some gals, and some of them, they may seem cool, but they may entice you, but don't give your strength to those people. And before you take offense at that, just gut check yourself. I mean, think of the conversations you've had in the last 6-7 months, right? Have you ever sat down and been like, I don't really trust her, and I'm talking to you ladies, if you've been in those conversations and that there are girlfriends or friends, not even friends, but just people that you don't trust, right? Especially with your son, or maybe your brother or brother-in-law, or somebody that is around them, and you're like, oh man, she better not, and you're like, better not what? Well, better not do bad, right, with those guys. So here's a mom, though, speaking to her son, and she's like, don't give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. And then she advises him, it's not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to take strong drink, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Okay, so here's a passage talking about alcohol. If you want to expand that out to any substance that changes the scope and thinking of your brain, altered state, fair. It's probably not an inappropriate reach of the scripture. But in this case, speaking of drink. Now, here's where I think that one could take this scripture and maybe tweak it in a way that it's not speaking. Let's listen carefully. She says, again, the queen, or the mother of the king, so the queen mother, it is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine. And so everyone who's anti-alcohol goes, ha-ha! Huzzah! No drinking. No drinking. Got to be a teetotaler. What a weird word. Do you know that, like, if you really try and find out the roots of teetotaler, that is people who don't drink, although that's what the word is accepted as, the definition, a teetotaler, there's really, the history of the word is really in the mists of time. Like, there are some various theories about it, but Nobody's really quite sure how that word came around, at least by my research. That said, a lot of people will come to this and go, haha, it is not for kings to drink wine or rulers to take strong drink. Okay, so no wine and no whiskey. Done. Okay, well, why? Why? Well, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed. Okay, so they drink wine and whiskey or strong drink. And what happens? They drink and they forget what has been decreed. They also pervert the rights of all the afflicted. And let's think about this. I enjoy whiskey or bourbon pretty regularly. I mean, sometimes I'll go like several weeks or maybe even a couple, 3 months, and I don't drink more than maybe a drink. And maybe I'll have like a drink every other night. But the point is I don't think that's what this is talking about. This is talking about somebody who's in a position of authority and in rulership, who has a responsibility in their job, and they're drinking on the job to a level that it causes them to actually forget like the laws, the decrees, the things that they're in charge of. Like they're so slammed, right? Because again, they're up in the palace, they're doing their thing, taking their walks around the property, occasionally going out, but they're so hammered that when they have to do the business of the kingdom, they're like, I don't know, right? They're just hammered. And the reason I say that is because having been someone who enjoys a beverage or two, it takes more than a couple drinks to get to the place where on the regular you're forgetting the decrees of life. You know, like, oh, I forgot I had to pick up so and so, or oh, I forgot I had to pay this bill, or oh, you know, I forgot, you know, that we were committed to doing this thing. Like in the course of life, that was how we would translate a king forgetting the decrees of the kingdom to our home life, right? The forgetting to take care of, you know, somebody's doctor appointment, or, you know, true alcoholism, right? Really, when you're given over to alcohol to that level and you're forgetting the basics of life, you've punched out, you're checking out, or maybe you're just smoking so much pot that you're just plowed, man. You're in the fog. Hey, I smoked so much pot back in the day. You know, probably between like, I don't know, 20 and 22, 23 for about 2-3 years. Huge pothead. And yeah, I know what it's like to be in that mist. And then when you come out of it, it's not till you have like 3 or 4 weeks out of that you really start to sober up, and you're like, whoa. I actually talked to a PhD candidate who studied cannabis and its effects. Like she was an actual researcher, I believe at University of California, Berkeley, and by no means against pot or any of that, but studying it and its impacts, because it was with the advent of it being legalized in so many places, it was an area of research that was fresh. And one thing that she said, and I'll never forget this, because it synced up with exactly what I had told her of my experience years ago, is that I knew when I had gotten off smoking, and it was literally, I would tell her, I said, it was like on the 21st day, 3 weeks exactly. And I got up and I would go to work, and because I would try to quit and I get back, and I tried to quit and I get back, try to quit and get back. On that 21st day, that 3rd week, I'd get up and it's like the air was fresher. My mind was clearer, this and that. And she almost like laughed out loud. Like, she's like, yes. She's like, our research shows that the body the average body takes 3 weeks exactly to process out all the things that remain in your system, because it like sits in your fat cells and like some other places in your body, and it takes time. So like your initial sobriety from pot, over a couple days, there's like one level, but she's like, it takes 21 days, 3 weeks. And then we see a massive change because your body actually processes it finally out. And it was like this aha moment. But I digress. All I'm saying is that if you're getting so plowed on whatever it is, okay, whatever it is, and you may be in an addiction, okay, I think you even draw this on over to something like porn, or you could draw this over to handheld phone games or something else that literally just consumes every part of you, okay, and gives your brain all kind of swirly feelings, right? Okay, the brain science that goes on when we engage certain kinds of things messes with our whole limbic system. Okay, well, what is this mom, this wise mom, this queen, tell her son who's going to be king or is king? She says, don't give your strength to women, okay, especially in this context, to the ways to those who destroy your ways to those who destroy kings. So bad actors and ladies who want you for your power, okay? And here's the other deal, Lemuel. It's not for you to drink wine and strong drink to the point where you're forgetting decrees and you're overlooking and perverting the rights of all the afflicted, because you're also responsible for the whole of the kingdom. So what I take from this is, it's not that you can't have a drink, okay? And I'm not a fan of people smoking pot, but look, if that's what you do, whatever, it's legal, okay? You're an adult, But my point to that would be, if you're so plowed, if you're so consumed by your addiction that you are slipping up, you know it. You catch wind of it, you find out, oh, I missed the bill, I forgot to do this, I had an appointment. This wisdom is speaking to you. Okay, it's speaking to all of us, it's speaking to me. Okay. What does she say? She says, give strong drink to the one who is perishing, and wine to those in bitter distress. Other Bibles will translate this fairly. Let me give a reading to that. Bitter in soul. Yeah, bitter in soul. Bitter distress, or bitter in soul. Give strong drink to the one who is perishing, wine to those in bitter distress. Let them drink and forget their poverty and remember their misery no more. And you're like, what? That sounds like giving, like we got this problem, this sort of compassion going on in the cities where they're handing out, tinfoil and clean needles, so people who do drugs, they can go do their fentanyl and their heroin and whatever else they want to do until they destroy their lives utterly. Is this what she is saying? I think she's leaning more into this in the sense of it's what we might think of almost as hospice care, or also in an era where people had a really hard life, where there weren't options, okay? It is hard to get off the street. I follow people, I've shared just recently, even yesterday, about people who are literally on the ground, loving people, reaching out, documenting their stories. I hear stories from people who get in and out of my car, people who are formerly homeless, sharing with each other about how hard it was to get off the street. Here's the deal. I think this is speaking something akin to hospice, okay, to those who are perishing, give them strong drink. They didn't have morphine. Um, in a legal sense, they didn't have fentanyl. Believe it or not, they give a lot of fentanyl in those ambulances. So you don't ever want to have fentanyl. You need to speak up right away when you're getting picked up by an ambulance. I know this from talking to people who work in that business. So I digress, but here's the thing. If you are perishing and you're in hospice, just recently, I mean, gosh, think of my dad. My dad fought pancreatic cancer in extenuating circumstances from that, various other things, for probably a couple years, but a year and a half. And he lasted through it for quite a long time. He had access to a particular drug that helped fight it and was never going to heal it. He did it in part both to extend the quality of his life, but also they were trying to get real data on this particular treatment. Anyway, at one point that ended. It wasn't going to be any more use, and he went into a fairly, sharp decline, as most people do with this kind of cancer. And during that time, he did have a surgery, and it didn't seem to really help. A stent, to get the fluids to flow, and it wasn't really helping. My dad wanted to be at home. And I love and respect that is the way my dad wanted to handle things. Of course, he was being offered all kinds of other options. Do you want to get this kind of treatment at the hospital? Do you want to get this surgery or this and that? And I remember my dad wanting to be at home and to be around family and as much as possible, and to have as much a normal life, even though he's in pretty good pain there through the end. And he, like everyone else who goes into this final stage of life, then at some point is given what's called hospice care. And that, it's a simple and somewhat obscure word to mean about ready to die here. We're going to just basically make you as comfortable as possible until that happens. As comfortable. And so with that, now I don't know what my dad was given, and so this isn't like divulging medical history or anything. People in hospice then are given things to help them deal with the pain, to be as alert as they can, and then when it's time to pass on. I recently had someone that I did not know, like in real life, real life. I'd never met this person face to face. Somebody I just followed on social media, and this guy was this incredible photographer. I love following photographers and sharing pictures. This guy would take pictures of the beach, coast, the Oregon coast, which of course is one of my favorite subjects. I love the Oregon coast. And he, all of a sudden, as these things happen, he just happened to mention, hey, by the way, things are going downhill pretty quick. And up to that point, I didn't know anything. Like, obviously his family and his close friends knew, but none of us out here, that are following his picture posts knew if we were just casually following that he was dying. He was dying of some sort of cancer. And at some point he shared that things are getting pretty rough and he's going to have to basically back off. And then his wife chimed in on his account and shared that, yeah, I think his name was Jeff. He had some other handle for his name. And she wanted to let everybody know how much he appreciated that he was reading the messages, the replies. He was unable to type, unable to really communicate, but that he had really appreciated that engagement. And so I think, I prayed for him and I let him know that I was praying for him, and other people did as well. But that he was in hospice and that he was in that last stretch, and that they were providing for him the medicine and the drugs that he needed to pass in whatever comfort he could. Now, back in the day, they didn't have all that. But what they did have is some strong drink. And so I take it this first part here, give strong drink to the one who is perishing. Okay, think of dying when there's no real medical care back in the day, and there's nothing to deal with. The spear wound in your side from a recent war that this king's sitting you out on, and the queen mother's like, you know what? Give them strong drink, make them comfortable, and wine to those in bitter distress. Now, this is a challenging one, and we've talked a little bit about that in regards to the houseless situation or those that are burdened by drug or alcohol abuse. But I think what her point here is that don't withhold some creature comforts of life to people who, you got to remember at this time, it's not like they can just pick up and get a different job or this or that. We're talking people at the destitute level of life 3,000 years ago. And I think her advice is like, hey, as a king, don't withhold this opportunity for them. Their lives are so rough. As a mercy, allow them this. Now, I don't know if that meant for them to ever sober up or not sober up. I get the impression that there are seasons of life, right, where one piece of advice is valuable, and other seasons of life, it's not really that helpful. Okay. She says further, verse 8, open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. Don't use your office for any other purpose but to glorify God, essentially, right? As we've read, probably 20, 30 times here about how God feels about the poor and how we treat those who are destitute and poor as in honoring God. And when we don't treat them well, we dishonor God. So sitting on that foundation, what's your advice? Yeah, take care of those who don't have a voice for themselves. Take care of those who are totally destitute. Make sure that when it comes to justice, that you're judging righteously, that you aren't like leaning one way or the other. You're just judging it right down the middle, calling balls and strikes. All right. Let's take a look at an excellent wife. Now, I joked. I wish there was a way to do this. There isn't, but I'll mention it. So I listen to sports radio, and I listen to stuff like that where they, rank teams, power rankings. Who's in this week's, top 5 power rankings in the NFL, or who are the top teams to get in the college football playoff by our estimation, or who are your top shooting guards in the NBA, rank them, right? And then people get on there, 2-3 people on set on TV, and they'll debate, well, my number 1 is so-and-so, and this is why. And then somebody will jump in there, I don't know about that. I have him number 2. I have this person number 1. They'll kind of bat it back and forth. You're probably totally aware of this kind of TV media. And so they'll put out their lists, right? Here we are in the middle of college football and NFL season, and there's very much a lot of this content out there. And so I joked, and it is only a joke, but I joked with my wife. I was like, what if I put out a social media post ahead of this message, right, about the Proverbs 31 wife? And I said, I'll be revealing my top 10 Proverbs 31 women that I know here on Facebook. Just as like, what? And then of course not fulfill it, because you don't want to cause discord or strife, right? It's not about that. And it's not even about judging others. But this whole idea is important. And this is why I almost considered putting out kind of a teaser post, just to get people like, what? I can't believe Zach would do that. And the reason why is because I think you all judge each other. I think you judge yourself. I know I judge myself as a husband, as a dad. I'm pretty hard on myself at times, uh, perhaps unfairly so. Sometimes I think I do better than I do. We all have these skewed visions of ourselves and how we match up. And of course, we always fall short of the ideal with what God's written. We're going to read this. Everyone's going to be like, oh, I don't live up to that. Of course, right? There's a vision, a clarity of the right way to do something. We're broken, sinful people being redeemed and made better day by day by God through his Holy Spirit, knowing the truth, right? It's a daily process. But here's the thing about that whole big board, that who are your top 10 Proverbs 31 women posts that I was going to tease out there. It's because and I'm speaking to those women who are godly women who strive for this stuff. Do you find yourself judging yourself? Do you have your own little big board? You got your little big board there where you're like, oh, she's doing so much better. I don't know, she has more resources. If I had those resources, could I do that? Or would I not? And then this whole like judging other people and trying to figure out where do you fit? You doing okay, not okay? You feel like you're at the bottom. And it's like, if I would have put out that list, I would have got crushed, and rightly so. Rightly so. But I bring it up again because do you have your own little big board list? You judging who you know and how awesome they are and how this person is awesome and that person is awesome and this person could do better and that person. And then you're like, where do I fit in? And then, are you doing that? Just a little gut check. Okay, because we're about to read about Proverbs 31 woman. All right. That said, there will be no list. Although I put my wife pretty high up on it. Okay. Verse 10, Proverbs 31. An excellent wife, who can find? Okay, now remind you, this is King Lemuel passing this on ostensibly to his son or sons, but this is the voice of his mother. This is King Lemuel, the words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. So it just doesn't stop here when he gets down here to the little chapter break that our Bibles, like I've got my little chapter break right there. That's not in the Bible. The text is. So we go from open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy, an excellent wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels. This is the voice of King Lemuel sharing the voice of his mother. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. Trust in marriage. This goes both ways. All of this stuff will go both ways. Nuanced, right? Some things more than others. But trust, first and foremost. Do I trust you? Now, this isn't like you get to create some framework that's outside of the Bible and then go, oh, you missed on this thing and you missed on that thing and you hit that okay, but you missed on this other thing that I created in my life to judge whether or not my spouse is successful or trustworthy enough. Okay, that's not what this is. Trust is, do I trust you? Can I trust you that I love you and you love me? And we'll see a number of attributes in here that will express that support and trust. She does him good and not harm. She does him good and not harm. The Queen Mother says, Lemuel, Lemuel, look for an excellent wife. One you can trust, one that does you good, not harm. Doesn't seek to tear you down, right? All the days of your life. Not early on when you're high on the honeymoon, in the midst of that, having kids and doing school and all that part of life and having all the pictures taken at the different events, and not just then when it's empty nest time and you're starting to rediscover each other and figure out life after the kids are out of the house. Or it's not just at the time when you're starting to get those wrinkles and fading into those latter days, or when you're holding the hand of the other person when they're passing on in hospice. It's the whole life. It's for better or for worse, to quote our modern vows that we give at our weddings, right? For better or for worse, in health and sickness, the whole enchilada. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works willingly with willing hands. She's like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it's yet night, provides food for her household, portions for her maidens. This describes, obviously, and to those of you who've done these studies, there are paragraphs, chapters written on each of these verses, right? I'm not going to do that justice, but I'll just note that this excellent wife, looking how to add the variety into it, variety into the things of life. In this case, the diet, it's not beans and rice every night. There's some variety, okay? It's not pizza or macaroni and cheese and broccoli every night, or chicken tenders, it's like there's a variety, okay? So it's just thinking, how can I add a little more, show a little love, adding a little creativity into the home, especially here around diet, but in other contexts, right? Verse 16, she considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. Work is not wrong. I don't know whoever said that. You even look back at the Puritan Christians, the ones who get all the bad rap for being so staunch and biblical and this and repressive. And yeah, there was some repressive stuff, and they were trying to keep the law. They didn't want to offend God, so they didn't dress in anything but black and white. And sex was an event that, was only meant to procreate. There's lots of things. Some of the religious history of the Christian church and various components of it maybe took things too far, did take things too far with keeping the law, keeping these righteous rules to the point of like, you're missing the point, right? But even back then, something like this, putting your hand to the plow and doing a business, like people had the opportunity to do stuff. So even 3,000 years ago, this queen speaking to her kingly son, talking to him about what an ideal wife is somebody who looks for opportunity to add to the wealth and to the gain of the home. Okay, so if you got a hankering to go do something to add a business to your life, take an interest, start asking questions, figure it out, ask friends for help. Can't do it on your own, but go do it. Go do it. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff and hands hold on to that spindle. She opens her hand to the poor, reaches her hands out to the needy. She's not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. It's okay to work hard. You know whether you are lazing about. It's up to you to discern all that, right? And you know, maybe you don't know if you're working too hard. And I always want to encourage you to make sure you gut check yourself. Make sure you aren't trying to earn your righteousness with God. At the same time, are you being obedient to the opportunities which God is giving you to work hard in? You've got to figure that out. This is a hard thing to figure out. But characterize an excellent wife, and she's somebody who's not like, sitting on the couch eating bonbons, watching soap operas all day. That's an old 80s cliche of the sort of the negative view of those who stayed at home versus went to the office and worked. Perhaps it's a negative artifact. Maybe it's helpful in some senses. But, you think of Married with Children, which was a funny show, but spoke a lot of truth, but also really gross in its exploitations of certain, the zeitgeist of the time, right? The broke guy who, aw shucks, goes to work, but he's really an ogre of a man who loves his family, and the wife who doesn't understand their predicament fairly well, but like just kind of lives in her head, watching stuff, eating ice cream on the couch, the kids who are just out the door and all over the place crazy. In the 80s, that would be a representation of something that goes the wrong direction from this. Something I hear in my car that is very real, especially in certain parts of town in the metro area. I hear wives, girlfriends, moms that talk about in their neighborhoods what they're going to do the next day and the next day and the next day. And it's basically, they'll talk about, okay, so we're going over to your house after we get the kids off to school, and we'll go hang out at your place and we'll do this thing, and we're going to drink wine, and then we'll wait till the kids get home. And you're like, no, you don't. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I've literally heard that conversation in my car. And it's not just once. There is a culture, if there's enough means and wealth in the home, where they're not eating bonbons, but somebody who's just like, you know what, I got it good. I'm not going to contribute. I am basically going to hang out. We're going to hire a housekeeper. We're going to hire, this person to do this other component of the home. And hey, we got the money, so why not? I just think that if we're all contributing to the home, whether you work, both parties work, the husband and the wife, out of the home, obviously then the chore set, what we're doing both to take care of our home changes. But if there's a stay-at-home situation and that person is literally, just drinking boxed wine all day with their girlfriends, and you're like, that's wrong. People don't do that. I'm telling you, I've listened to them tell each other their plans during the week. I've heard anecdotal stories doing what I do. This stuff happens, okay? And maybe because you've hung out and done it. When we outsource all of these responsibilities, and I would include men in this at your jobs, or if you're a stay-at-home, you're outsourcing your responsibilities if your job is to stay home. When we outsource the home responsibilities, we don't invest in them personally. The home starts to be a place that is transited and not lived in. It is a place of meeting, but it's not a place that has been loved with your own strong arm, your own creative efforts, your own ideas about food, as you consider people, as you consider experiences, how they'll respond to this or that. And so when we do the hard work for our families in the home, it is not just doing the act, it's love expressed. It is love expressed. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 22, she makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at times to come. Again, somebody who is constantly looking for the opportunity to provide and care for, thinking of individuals, looking for opportunities to be creative and to bring in income. These are all good values, right? She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. You know, we all take this advice, men and women. But in the home, as this queen mother is speaking to her kingly son about the kind of excellent wife she hopes him to find, she wants this person to have a mouth that has wisdom. Somebody who carefully considers who the Lord is, what the situation is, rightly discerns things because they carefully listen, they understand. And the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. What comes out of the mouth from the heart that's been worked on to be a place of kindness internally, to express it externally. And even if things are a bit of a chaotic, difficult moment inside, that person has the self-control to speak kindness into a situation. Paul said, it's the kindness of the Lord that leads us to repentance in the book of Romans, of all places. The kindness of the Lord leads us to turn around back to the Lord. And so the queen mother speaks the truth to her son and teaches him, who is the king, to look for a wife that has a mouth that speaks wisdom and kindness. That's a gut check for all of us. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands. Let her works praise her in the gates. So, atop my list is my wife. My beloved wife, Heather, has over the years shown me the meaning of an excellent wife. And I am so blessed to have found her. She has made me a better man day after day. Every time we disagree, when we, all the cliches, right? When we disagree, when we argue, when we laugh, when we share life, when we love one another. In all these circumstances, on all these moments, Heather has been a person that I esteem as an excellent wife. And I know that she would never take that mantle or ever own that. Humility would never let her do so. But I am her husband. And the Bible tells me that's my job. That is my job, to be cognizant and recognizing, to tell her, even when she's going through a rough patch, whatever struggle she's dealing with, to remind her that she is an excellent wife, that I am blessed to be her husband. And if I am her son, as her son, my son gets to say, Mom, I love you. Thank you. Mom, you're awesome. Thanks for teaching me. All these things. So guys, daughters, our part as family is to cherish and celebrate and value and support these incredible people that God has placed into our lives, these moms, these wives, because they are excellent. They are excellent. All right. Well, we start a new book tomorrow. New episode, new book, Ecclesiastes. But until then, I'll tell you, keep walking, okay? You may not match up to any of this stuff. Maybe all this stuff is crazy town to you, or you're super mad that this is even in the Bible. But wrestle with it, mull it over, keep walking, take another step. God bless you. Bye-bye.